right, so good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome in from across the continent and beyond. My name is Jesse. I'm here with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. And if it's your first time joining us, like our live class, it is their first time joining us. We are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. Now, everything we do goes to YouTube and stays there forever. So if you want to check this out in 3 weeks or 3 years, you can absolutely go there and do just that. It is always an adventure, and it's so nice to have you as we get to showcase the coolest people and places on planet Earth. And today it's special for 2 reasons. Number one, we continue our epic series in conjunction with the folks at I Was a Kid. Karen Romano-Young has done an amazing job in showcasing some of the coolest careers on planet Earth and the inspiring stories of people who ended up in them. So over the last few weeks, we've had the chance to bring on Sabrina Heiser talking about kelp forests in Antarctica. We brought on Sahar Salim talking about going into Egyptian tombs to scan mummies. These are all on our YouTube channel. It's a really exciting adventure. Do check out iwasakid.com when you're done. Lots of great stuff there. But most excitingly of all, I gotta say, as exciting as that is, this is the beginning of our month solely dedicated to amazing women in science. We have done this every year since our inception. About 65% of our programs are with women anyway, but in February, we kick out all the dudes and we bring in like 50 amazing, badass women. And it's so cool. And there's no better person to start that than Dr. Angie Patterson, who has the single coolest, most badass picture we've had in our history of Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. The shotgun scientist. Angie, thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm so excited to share your stories of understanding forests, how they're being impacted by climate change, the cool things that you do to get that information through the work that you do. So welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you so much, Jesse. I'm so happy to be here and to share a little bit about what I do, how I got interested in this, and how I can encourage you all to explore forests a little bit more. So looking forward to talking about it.
Well, let's dive in. I know you've got a lot to share with us. And I want to note, too, for our YouTube classes as well, Angie's got some interactive bits. So have your typing fingers at the ready to answer some questions she's going to share with you throughout the program. Kilolo, I will be coming to you guys live, so unmute your mic as well. But Angie, take us away.
Sounds great. Okay, so I'm so happy again to be here, to be able to share my journey with how I started, as this young girl living in the northeastern Pennsylvania, not really having a clue what life had in store for me, to becoming the shotgun scientist that hunts moving trees, to educator, and most importantly, a scientist. So I'll tell you a little bit today about my journey, but I want to encourage you to take a look at this wonderful project online created by Karen Romano-Young. Jesse mentioned it before, called I Was a Kid, where I got to talk about how I got interested in environmental science and all of the twists and turns that came along with that. Plus, there are some really cool cartoon drawings of all the scientists that she drew. And I actually have mine hanging on the wall in my office, and it's always a hit when people come in and see it. So for me, and maybe most young kids like yourself, think about what you want to be when you grow up. And I always thought that there were really only 2 careers that would make me very successful in life. And that was to become a lawyer or a medical doctor. However, I grew up in nature, surrounded by woods, and I really loved animals. So when I got old enough to think about what I was going to study in college, I actually decided that I wanted to become a veterinarian. So I was actually the first person in my family to go to college, and I was so grateful to have been accepted to attend Cornell University in upstate New York. And that was because it was one of the best places to study the science of animals. But unfortunately, studying animals to become a veterinarian didn't really work out for me. So I had to figure out what I wanted to study. So I considered, all types of disciplines, from music to anthropology to psychology. But I stumbled upon a conservation biology class and really found my passion. So my first experiences with plants started out with washing dishes in a plant cryobiology lab, which is a lab that studies like frozen cells, and tending to experimental plants at the greenhouses. And this is where I actually got a taste of what it felt like to work in science. And eventually I got my first taste on what it felt like to do research when I joined a plant disease lab, and I conducted experiments on the effects of barley yellow dwarf virus on the grasses that are from Kansas. And this virus is actually transferred by little bugs called aphids. And once infected, the grasses start to turn brown and can lower the health of the grass or eventually even kill them. So this research really got me interested in studying plants to understand how they can respond to pretty complex environmental conditions. So to make sure I wasn't really missing out on other types of opportunities in environmental science, I decided to do an internship at Cornell University's Biological Field Station in upstate New York, where I studied the evacuation rates of Chinook salmon. And that's basically a fancy way to say that I studied how fast fish pooped different types of food. So nevertheless, this opportunity gave me the chance to explore a very new type of science for me, fishery science, where I actually got to use a seine net. I got to dissect fish guts and work off of a boat at the crack of dawn, or really in the middle of the night. After graduating from Cornell, I knew I wanted to work in the environmental science field, but I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. Even though I never traveled before, I knew that I'd love it, and I knew that I could go any place around the world with working in this field. So my plan was to actually do internship after internship until I found exactly what I wanted to do. So my first experience actually led me to the deserts of Arizona, where I got to witness all kinds of desert ecology. I got to count and use a mist net to catch bats, and I got to see some of the most beautiful sunsets that I've ever seen in my life. And it was here where I also learned all about symbiotic mutualism, which is there's going to be a lot of vocabulary being thrown out today. So hopefully you'll remember some. So symbiotic mutualism is the special relationship that has evolved over time between two organisms where they both receive benefits without harm to one another. So the Sanita moth actually lays its eggs on the flower of the Sanita cactus. And by doing so, the moth pollinates the flowers of the cactus. And the flowers eventually turn into fruit, which falls to the ground, in which the seeds then grow another cactus. And the larvae, or the baby moths, which are nested inside that fruit, receive nutrients, and they grow and they develop in a very safe environment until it's time to burrow out of the fruit and begin its new life as a moth. So, you might say that me and the desert, in a way, formed our own special relationship where I learned how to explore, how to ask questions, and witness some of the most amazing processes of life that exist in one of the most harshest environments in the world. And one dusk evening, I saw my very first bobcat, actually, as it pranced its way down a rocky hill. And it was so cute. It was very cute. But all I could think about was like, oh, actually, where's Mama? So that was a little bit scary there. But my plan to go from one internship after another to expand my experiences actually ended shortly. And that was because I ended up packing my bags and moving to New York City to work at Barnard College as a research assistant in a plant biology lab. And it was here where I really gained experience in understanding, how the environment can influence the genetics of plants. And we did a lot of lab work. We did a lot of work outside. We also looked at how tree roots change the way they look in response to whether or not mycorrhizal fungi is growing in or on them, which you could actually see in the lower right-hand photo of this slide. And these little black dots are the fungi that's actually inside the tree root. And these fungi are super special because they also form a symbiotic relationship with plants. They actually help plants get water and nutrients from the soil in places that the roots may have a hard time accessing. And in return, the plants feed the sugar that they make to the fungi in order for them to survive. So after my wonderful experiences at Barnard College, I was able to go to Columbia University for graduate school to study plant ecophysiology. But, what exactly is plant ecophysiology? So let's break it down. If we break down the word ecophysiology, we have eco, which is Greek for environment, and physiology is the study of how organisms and their parts work, from the cells of an organism to the chemistry that happens within it, to even the physics of how parts move and function. So I became someone who studies how plants work under different environmental conditions. So one of the first things I learned about at Columbia University is what climate change was. So climate change refers to long-term shifts in temperatures and weather patterns. And what we are typically seeing is warmer temperatures happening over time and more extreme weather events like hurricanes. But what is actually causing the climate to change? Well, that's the accumulation of greenhouse gases. So I'd like to pose my first question to the group. What are greenhouse gases?
Okay, so our Kilo group, if you guys want to chime in, you can unmute your mic. YouTubers, if you guys want to chime in on the chat, we'd love to hear from you. I think a lot of our groups might know this. Climate change is something that, again, when I came up in school, it was barely talked about at all. And I think it's pretty much de rigueur at this point. But if you guys want to chime in Ontario, 6-7s, go for it.
Yeah, we can try. Does anyone want to try and guess what? Yeah, Avery, go for it.
What is climate change?
No, what are greenhouse gases?
Oh, yeah, basically, what gases that are green.
We have the answer. But Scarlett does have maybe a more serious answer. Scarlett, do you want to share?
Yes, I do.
Scarlett just did a project on it, actually.
Cool. Way to go, Scarlett.
Greenhouse gases trap heat from the sun, and then sunlight reflected by the surface. I'm just going off of what the pictures.
Yeah, no, you're right.
That's perfect. Fantastic. Way to go,
That's
Scarlett.
awesome. Yeah, you pretty much hit the nail on the head. Gases, greenhouse gases are gases like carbon dioxide or CO2 that's actually trapped in the air. When that happens, the atmosphere begins to act like a greenhouse. And what do greenhouses do? They trap heat. So we are seeing that the more CO2 we have in the air, the warmer the temperatures become. So the second thing I learned about at Columbia University was that plants were moving to more tolerable locations in order to survive this increase in temperatures. So I want you to let's go back to the Ice Age. So 20,000 years ago, there weren't any plants on the upper half of the United States and into Canada because it was covered in ice. And they say that if you were standing in New York City in the middle of the Ice Age and you looked up, you would actually have about 2 miles of ice straight above your head. But near the end of the last Ice Age, about 11,000 years ago, the climate started to become warm and the ice started to shrink and retreat to the north. And with that retreating of the ice, which is shown in this bluish white color that we see on these moving images, you can see how 4 different trees that now mostly live in colder climates started to move from the south towards the north, tracking the colder temperatures that they are used to. And you can see that the colors on each of these pictures start to expand and start to move upwards. So you can imagine that if a plant can't move up north in a timely fashion, they may also start to migrate up towards tops of mountains where temperatures are cooler and less stressful for them to survive and thrive. So we can actually, we can see this actually happening in a lot of areas on Earth. So take a look at these photos. Scientists actually took photos of a mountainside in Sweden near the Arctic tree line as depicted by these black lines in these photographs. And these tree lines actually mark the boundary where environmental conditions slow or stop the growth of shrubs and trees. So in 1977, you can notice that shrubs haven't really moved past this line, probably because it was too cold for them to grow on top of the mountain. However, as the climate conditions became more favorable, probably more warmer and wetter, we have shrubs and trees starting to move up towards the mountaintop where they weren't there before. But what happens when the climate changes faster than the trees have a chance to migrate or adapt? Well, some trees may start to die and become extinct in that particular location. Or they may be able to tolerate warming and learn how to adapt and persist in the new climate they became exposed to. Or the third option is migration, or moving to a location that is best suited for them. But wait, you're probably asking, how can plants move or migrate? Well, I'll let you judge for yourself.
Oh, there we are.
Where are they going? They have business with the orcs. My business is with Isengard, not with a rock and stone. Come, my friends. The Ents are going to war. It is likely that we go to our doom. Wash of the Ents.
Okay, I'm sorry to say, that plants can't actually move like animals do, right? They don't have legs and are instead sessile organisms. So here's another vocab for you. Sessile means fixed in one place or immobile, so they can't move. So I'd like to pose another question to the group. How do plants actually migrate?
Ooh, no pressure. We're just solving an epic eco question of all time. Gilno, YouTubers, you want me to come back to our live group? What do we think? How do they migrate?
The seeds shut up. I said that.
So they make the seeds fly. I know we're arguing, but yeah.
Now we're arguing. We're causing discord in the classes, but I think that might be dead on.
That is dead on. Yes, I'm so happy everyone kind of knows this answer. So yes, plants depend on seed dispersal or the movement of their seeds in order to successfully establish themselves and reproduce to ensure a thriving population. And there's different ways that seeds can migrate, right? They can, animals can transport them to different locations. They can be transported by wind, by water, like coconuts, or by force. They can actually pop. Some plants can actually do that. So we know trees are responding to climate change, but are they doing anything to help climate from changing? So let's go back to climate change. It's important to know what things are actually causing greenhouse gases to accumulate in the atmosphere. Well, there are natural activities like volcano eruptions or changes in the Earth's orbit around the sun that can have an effect on how much carbon dioxide is in the atmosphere. In addition, we have a lot of human activities that contribute, such as factories, power plants, and buildings that actually burn fossil fuels for electricity and heating. And this puts a lot of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Humans and animals, like cows, respire or breathe CO2 into the atmosphere. Plants and soils also respire. And if trees are cut down, otherwise known as deforestation, those trees are going to decompose or break down back into soil. And that process produces a lot of CO2 that goes back into the atmosphere. But did you know plants can actually reduce the amount of carbon dioxide there is in the atmosphere? Well, they do. And through the process the process that causes this to happen is photosynthesis. And I hope you all covered photosynthesis or have started to learn about photosynthesis. But photosynthesis happens when plants take up carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, water from the soil, and they use light energy from the sun to make the sugars that is needed for them to grow and the oxygen that is required for us to breathe. But remember that plants also respire or breathe, which is the opposite of photosynthesis. The plants actually break down the sugars that they made by using oxygen and metabolic energy to make carbon dioxide that goes back into the atmosphere. So more water is actually made in this process as well, and more energy is generated for them to continue photosynthesis so they can grow and reproduce and repair themselves. So because both these trees need both of these processes to survive, we need to understand how their physiology is changing when temperatures get warmer to see if they will be able to survive and adapt, or if they may need to migrate to a more suitable climate for them to be able to function correctly. So I was curious to see how the physiology of plants are responding to increasing temperatures. So I went out to a forest in New York State and started to collect leaves and measure their photosynthesis and respiration under many different temperatures to see if some trees might be better at tolerating warmer temperatures than others. So here's a video made by The Verge Science of how I actually did that.
This race is on display in Black Rock Forest, just north of New York City, where for years, Angie has been keeping tabs on the movement of tree species, including the northern red oak.
Very important tree species in this forest because it makes up about 70% of the forest composition.
As the climate shifts, new trees are also moving in, and the future of the red oak and the whole forest is uncertain.
So I'm comparing the physiological responses to temperature of trees in order to see if there's a physiological mechanism that's driving tree migration.
To learn how Black Rock's trees respond to changing temperatures, Angie needed leaves.
You want to make sure that you have a clean shot because believe me, I've had plenty of leaves with holes in it.
For Angie, the best leaves to study were all the way at the top of the canopy because they get a consistent and even amount of sunlight.
So we're going to want to go to the branch towards the middle there, right in that open space.
But those leaves are really hard to get to, hence the heavy weaponry.
The shotgun was actually a very efficient and cheap way to collect my samples.
Over the course of 3 years, Angie used her shotgun to collect leaves from 23 tree species, including the red oak.
Fire!
Using a device called a lycor, she subjected the leaves to different temperatures and CO2 levels and measured their photosynthesis and respiration.
Covering the chamber completely.
Basically, she wanted to see how each of the species would respond to different swings in the climate.
And then I compared their photosynthetic rates and respiration rates as temperatures increase.
She found that the red oak and some other trees are at a real disadvantage compared to other trees that are moving in, meaning the red oaks could be displaced.
So the worst case scenario is that northern red oaks, in this forest at least, could be dying, and that would really open up the forest floor to a lot of other tree species or plant species or invasive species to come in.
In the best case scenario, southern trees migrating into Black Rock will pick up the slack and keep the forest thriving. But that's assuming they arrive in time. With the climate changing at such a rapid pace, trees might have to move up to 10 times faster in order to reach areas that they'll thrive in. And some researchers estimate that up to 39% of plant species are committed to extinction because they won't be able to move fast enough, or won't have anywhere to move to. So if trees can't keep up with climate change, should we help them?
Okay, so that's a great question, and I encourage everyone to have that type of discussion to see if there are solutions to this, if we can, or how can we help trees for the future of climate change. So for my research, what we found was that different species of trees can photosynthesize or take up carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and respire or breathe CO2 at very different rates. So you can imagine cars where one might have the engine of a sports car like a Ferrari, and the other one has the engine of a Ford. You know, they are both going to the same place, but one might be able to do it more efficiently or do it faster than the other. And those differences might be the reason why some trees might do better under a warmer climate than others. Those that aren't able to keep up may have to migrate to a better location that has the best climate for them. And if not, they may end up dying and becoming locally extinct in an area. So next time you're outside walking in the woods, you know, look at the trees and the plants and ask yourself, how did they get there? Will they always be there? And can they adapt to our changing world? There's a lot of questions that are worth exploring, and I encourage you to discover the world of how trees work so we can understand the future of our forests. So thank you.
Thank you, Angie. Not only was that a ton of fun, but it's also the first program in our history to feature Christian Bale and an Ent. So I appreciate that. Probably never to be matched again, which is quite fun.
Yes.
YouTubers, if you guys want to chime in with questions, please do. Don't be shy. Kello, I'm coming to you in a second. I'm going to lead off with, when I'm a biologist by background, and I'd pass these labs, and there'd be this fancy tech toy. And I got to ask, like, how much does that cost? And they would tell me, and I'd be like, I don't even want to be in the room with that thing. Like, don't even let me near that machine. I will break it. If I look at it. So your scanner that you bring out in the forest, how much is that? What's the deal? How do you get it out there? Tell us more.
Great question. So that machine is a very cool machine. It's called a Lycor. It's made by Lycor. We call it Lycor, but it's basically a portable photosynthesis machine. So it's able to, you're able to stick the leaf in that chamber. You're able to change all the different types of environmental measurements inside, environmental conditions inside, like light, humidity, airflow, temperature, and the leaf inside will do all sorts of things, but mostly they will be exchanging gases. And with that, you can actually measure how much they're photosynthesizing, how much they're respiring, and it's not cheap. It's about the cost of a small Kia, $30,000, $40,000. It might be more. I use 3 of them.
Jeez. Yeah, a fleet, an armada of vehicles right in the woods. Thank you for that, Dr. Angie. Kello, I'm going to head to you guys. If you have a question for us, come on up, unmute your mic, and you are good to go. Hey.
No, I'm eating.
Sorry, they're in the middle of their snack right now. But I was wondering, what's your favorite part about your job, Angie?
Ooh, great question. So I don't do much research anymore, but my favorite part about research was actually going outside, going outdoors, just being surrounded by nature. And I'm lucky to have been able to do that in my current role as an educator at Mount Holyoke College. It's shown in the background of my picture here. And I actually take students from different classrooms, from art to biology to history, and I get to go outside with them and explore the natural landscape and engage with the land. So that is my favorite part of my job.
Anytime people get the chance to be outside is their universal favorite part of their job, which should speak to the fact that it's a really cool gig to begin with, and we should all aspire to have more time outside in the roles that we have. Okay, a follow-up too. Is there anyone else doing this? Because, of course, as you know from the fact that you've made it a thing that people know you by, it's not usual that people are shotgunning trees. Is this a standard thing? Are you the first to pilot this? Are there some Finnish scientists that are blowing their trees away as well? What's the deal?
You know, surprisingly, there's a good amount of us using a shotgun, and I was not the first one. I am not a pioneer. I'm just the first one to take the name. So there's a difference. But my advisor and mentor at Columbia University, Dr. Kevin Griffin, he actually used his shotgun back when he was a PhD student. So, you know, this is kind of a very efficient way to be able to get to the tops of trees. But the reason why it, you know, may not be as common a method that people see is because a lot of land might be public, and there's rules and regulations that you have to follow. And I was lucky enough to be in a forest that was privately owned, and they allowed it for that.
This is going to be the next follow-up question. What permits do you need for this? How do you make this happen? Specific to those forests, or you can't just go to a park off the school grounds and go do this when you're done.
No. Yeah. There's I mean, you have to have proper training. You should probably take safety courses, gun safety courses, things like that. But once you know how to use a shotgun, there's plenty of hunters that know how to use a shotgun. It's all about practicing the aim and just being safe while doing it, and making sure that any potential hikers are aware that shooting is happening in the area. Just making sure there's proper communication so everybody's safe.
Yeah, we've got a lot of communities joining in today's broadcast live YouTube after the fact that are from smaller communities that are more hunting focused. So I'm sure a lot of our students might have actually used a shotgun in the past. Yeah. Very cool. Killalo, I'm going to head back to you. Snack time or not, if you've got another question for us, unmute your mic and take us away, Miss Coolest class. Hey.
Cool, thank you. Does anyone else have a question?
No,
I think we're out of questions, but I could ask you lots of questions.
I wasn't listening properly.
Okay.
So they might have already said this, but why do trees migrate?
Oh, they're asking why they migrate. They're migrating because of climate change, eh? But you go for it. Thanks.
Yeah, exactly. They're trying to keep up with the changing climate, right? So in one particular location, as it gets warmer, those trees may not be able to deal with that change. And so as they start to spread their seeds, right? Some land further north, some land to the east, and wherever the environmental conditions is perfect for them, they'll start to grow and thrive. So that's how they incrementally start to move or migrate.
So a follow-up question from me, because I grew up in forests very much like the one you were just showcasing with Black Rock there, and very lucky to be in that position. It's a fairly rare kind of forest in the world. Can you speak to sort of what the sort of mixed, we've got a little deciduous trees, you've got some coniferous trees maybe, is like on a global scale, because it's pretty unusual.
Yeah. These forests here in the Northeast, we call them temperate deciduous forests. So they're mostly made up of what we call deciduous trees, and deciduous trees lose their leaves every year. Of course, we have evergreen trees that keep their leaves on all year round. But we have a common mix of hardwoods. You have your oaks, you have your birches, you have your maples, and then you have your pines, pine trees, cedar, things like that. And these forests are very important in regards to climate change, global climate change, is because they actually are really fast growing. A lot of these trees in the Northeast, these forests in the Northeast, were cut down for agricultural purposes like 100 or 200 years ago. And so these forests are growing. They're still growing. They're not old. A lot of them are not old growth forests. So because they're still growing means taking up carbon from the atmosphere. So they're huge sinks of for carbon storage. They can store a lot of carbon.
There's a lot of work being done to bring back forests in a lot of these areas. And if you want, actually, specifically for our live class, about an hour and a half west of you, of course, is Algonquin Park, which is one of the best parks of all time. And there's such an incredible logging history there. And there's literally the visitor center has a diorama, a video, a hike that you can do that illustrates this and the changing culture over time to sort of make it in a managed way where we're leaving it for nature and studying it. And there's a great tradition of that in Ontario, and a lot of our classes are joining from today. So thank you for that, Dr. Angie. Time flies and you're having fun. We're going to wrap up with just one more question. Is there a tree that you've had the chance to work with that you are particularly passionate about? Like literally, I am a tree hugger. I go on walks, and if there's like a good tree, you got to just like give it like a little.
Yeah.
Good. Is there something that jumps out for our kids if they might feel a little awkward doing this that you would recommend? Like, what's the best tree? It's the moral of the story.
That's fun. That's a fun question. I like all trees, but to hug a tree, I really admire the red oak. It's kind of the star in the show for me. My other favorite tree is the weeping willow tree. And that brings me memories back to my childhood of just sitting underneath the weeping willow and kind of hiding behind the leaves because they go all the way down to the floor. So yeah.
I know that the maple is on our flag, and it's a very cool flag, but
Yeah.
horse chestnut is an amazing tree, and I'm going to do a plug for that. If you get a chance to see them, they're very wicked. Dr. Angie, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, I want to stress this is part of our I Was a Kid series. Check out Sahara and Sabrina. They are amazing scientists. It's a great follow-up to this. And if you want to find out more about Dr. Patterson and her awesome work, theshotgunscientist.com, all sorts of amazing outreach work. There's very few people we bring on that do more to share their work with a wide audience than you. So a big thank you for your time today. And I'm going to bring in our Kilolo class to say a big thank you and farewell with me. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful day. And we'll see